Hi, everybody. My name is Andy. I am presenting my windshield survey. For my windshield survey, I have chosen two communities in the San Diego area. One is the La Jolla community, the other is City Heights. So, sorry, this gets a little frozen for the first click for some reason. So the La Jolla community is what's considered my high income community. It travels south of Del Mar, west to the ocean, north of Pacific Beach, to the left there. City Heights is a smaller overall space community, and it is in East San Diego. It is east of North Park, south of Normal Heights, west of what's considered the college area. So, for my general appearance, physical environment, housing, and all of that, the La Jolla area is considered very well off. All of the houses there, as you can see, are well manicured, well put together, very what's considered high end housing and multi room family homes. And there's very little signs of decay or pollution. Very little signs of decay, excuse me. What is something to notice, and I did pick two communities that sort of overlap in certain ways. La Jolla as a community was established very, very early on in San Diego history. So actually, a lot of the houses are older. Now, that doesn't mean that they haven't been remodeled. One thing I will say that La Jolla, even though it is the higher income city or area, was lacking is the roads. So I noticed I chose to ride a scooter around for my windshield survey that the roads in La Jolla were absolutely atrocious, very unkept, lots of potholes. Whereas in City Heights, I found that a lot of the roads had been recently repaved. Now, compared to La Jolla, City Heights physical environment appeared very cramped, very smashed together. We saw a lot of houses in disrepair, not a lot of yards that were taken care of, and a lot of multi units. So I saw a lot of apartment complexes, whereas in La Jolla it was a lot of homes. And probably one of the biggest things that comes to mind when you think about the difference is just an amount of trash. So in La Jolla, there's very little trash on the ground or near the beach, but in City Heights, it was kind of everywhere, and actually a significant amount of trash in certain places. It was a little bit unkempt also. As far as safety is concerned, I felt safe in both neighborhoods. However, I could see that if you weren't from City Heights or weren't familiar with it, there are a lot more people out and about that it maybe just felt unsafe to different people. So, demographics. This is all from the US Census Bureau. So, the demographics of this that the total population of La Jolla is 46,781 versus City Heights 69,800. You notice the size difference between the two, so it means that City Heights is much more cramped together. The median age is actually fairly significant, with La Jolla being 43.3 years old and City Heights being 29.6. Also, a significant difference is the difference in high school graduates. So the US Census Bureau states that 98.4% of people in La Jolla state that they have graduated high school, whereas only 66 have said that in City Heights. Median household income is pretty significant as well, with the median being 102,000 in La Jolla and only 37,000 in City Heights. And remember, the word median means that there's people below and above that. So those averages are very, very different. You have 10.3% below the poverty line in La Jolla and about 28% below the poverty line in City Heights. As far as race, in La Jolla, we have 76.3% white, 1.2% African American, 16.1% Asian, and 8.6% Hispanic. In City Heights, you have 31.6% white, 14.3% Black or African American, 18.2% Asian, and 54% Hispanic. You see a much bigger diversity in City Heights, absolutely, than you do in La Jolla. Common areas, parks, and recreation. I noticed that actually both areas had a lot of parks. San Diego's sort of known for that, and a lot of different rec buildings. The difference was that La Jolla's rec building was expansive. You could tell it was an older building, as you can see on the top left corner. It was huge. It took up 3 blocks with its parks, its gym, its actual rec building, and all sorts of different things. I noticed in City Heights, I only found one recreation building. I know that there's a new one, but it wasn't close to where I was riding around at the time. So that is just one building that presents a rec center, a piece of a rec center in City Heights, and then also the parks. And a main difference, and something that I'll touch on a lot in this presentation, is the amount of fencing. So in La Jolla, everything's open, nothing's fenced in, and you'll find in most of my pictures of City Heights, everything has bars and or fences around it. So that was a pretty big difference. Services, transportation, schools, and protective services. So as well as education. So in La Jolla, there are 5 public schools, and that accounts for there's 2 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and 1 public high school. There's 11 private schools just in the La Jolla area, and that does K through. In City Heights, you have 12 elementary schools that are public, 3 middle schools that are public, and 2 public high schools. But you only have 2 private elementary schools. No options for private high schools in the City Heights area. You have 2 charter high schools, and charter high schools can be anything. They can be considered a private-like school, but they can also be considered where kids can go who are struggling or having educational behavior problems. Transportation, this is something that's reversed from what we've kind of been leaning towards. So actually in La Jolla, we only have 1 public bus line that goes there. It's the 30 bus. Whereas in City Heights, they're numerous, far too numerous to list here. The City Heights buses are well dispersed, and there's lots of lines that you can access from all over City Heights. The protective services was pretty stark in comparison. Now, I did have to take in the fact of geographical size partly played a part in this, but there are 3 police stations that service the La Jolla area and 3 fire stations, whereas in City Heights, there's only 1 and 1 fire station as well. All this was gathered through research through the internet, listed in my references. So continued, these are pictures of some of the education. The La Jolla Public High School's bottom left, and a private school on the top. You have a City Heights Public Elementary School and City Heights Public Middle School. Again, you notice the fencing and the bars. Big difference. Next, we have stores and industry, food and shops, that sort of thing. So actually, the part of La Jolla that I researched, which is considered the village of La Jolla, it has a row of shops that is actually nicknamed the Rodeo Drive of San Diego. And it is known for having very high-end stores. So all I did was kind of take a picture from the street view of it. Very well kept on the left there. You can find things like a Maserati dealership, Lamborghini dealership. There's a Cartier, a Lucky, a Ralph Lauren, Banana Republic. These are just a few of the shops that are available there. There's some that even if I said the name, I wouldn't even know what I was talking about, but I just know that it's very. In City Heights, there's a ton of different marketplaces and stores, almost more than what I would say La Jolla has for commerce. And it's definitely not high end, but it's amazing discount stores, ethnic grocery and ethnic clothing stores, and a ton of corner liquor stores. Very famous for finding those corner liquor stores. What I love about it is just the amazing diversity. So each something very different between La Jolla and City Heights is in La Jolla, you only see things written in English. In City Heights, stores have different languages presented on them, and not just Spanish, which we kind of assume for our area, but different Asian languages, different African languages. They're all very represented there, and you can go there and get things specific to that country. So I think that's really cool. As far as food, there's numerous high-end options in La Jolla. It has a lot of five-star restaurants, a lot of big-time chefs go there. And there's also great cheap food around, not so much fast food, but they still have like taco shops, which is, imperative for San Diego, and different, more affordable options for food as well. La Jolla doesn't only have expensive. City Heights, you're going to find a lot of fast food chains, as well as different cultural restaurants. So you can find Asian, African, Mexican. You can find a ton of what I consider like pop-up. No, that's not the right word. Like shops. So you may sit down, but it's not your formal dining experience. But it's not technically fast food also either. But they have so many food options from different cultures. So next we move on to health clinic and access. So actually in both La Jolla and City Heights, the amount of clinics were numerous. And you can see them from all over the place. Different names, different groups, they service different types of people, but there's a ton of clinics. Now, something a little different, La Jolla actually has UCSD and Scripps, which are world-renowned hospitals, and they have different locations, satellite locations throughout all of San Diego, but those are they're the main areas there. Um, and they are known for being top of the line as far as healthcare. City Heights actually doesn't have its own hospital. Its closest hospital is in Hillcrest. Geographically, it's actually about as far away from City Heights to Hillcrest as it is from La Jolla Village, where I was, to the hospitals, which is still considered La Jolla. But still very interesting to notice that City Heights does not have its own hospital. It only has clinics. Now, the clinics in City Heights do have options. A lot of low-income clinics or like clinics where you don't have to pay if you meet certain criteria, those are available there in City Heights as well. So some health concerns that I took from Healthy People 2020 that I thought would be issues for the different locations in La Jolla. I definitely thought mental health, anxiety, depression, substance abuse, obesity, but related to overindulgence, not necessarily lack of good nutrition. I think people in La Jolla have access to healthy foods, but when you have more money, you are able to overindulge as well. And then older adult concerns. So just the fact that the median age is so much older in La Jolla, I think it presents its own set of health concerns for the community. Now in City Heights, I considered nutrition weight status. So I considered obesity and not as much access to healthy, nutritious food, just more food that's fast, easy, and filling, and high in fat and salt. Related to that, cardiovascular issues, I considered that physical activity would probably not be as prevalent in City Heights as it was in La Jolla, which I did notice. There's a ton of people in La Jolla biking, running, the new scooters that are out and about, whereas in City Heights, I saw very little of that. It's just people riding in cars. And then homelessness, as a health concern, I didn't really mean it it's not a health concern in and of itself, but the health concerns that come along with being homeless. There's a huge homeless population in City Heights, whereas in La Jolla, they would tend to get harassed or moved around more because people wouldn't want the homelessness population there. In City Heights, they tend to be able to kind of stay in one place longer. And sanitary conditions and issues like that present a whole host of problems. So those were my concerns. My stakeholders. So for La Jolla, I chose to Dorothy. Dorothy has been a property owner in La Jolla for 40 plus years. She's been living there full time for 10 years. And she stated that actually age-related health issues are her most concern. She's an older lady as well. With the median age being fairly high, I thought that it was appropriate for her to assume that many people are in their advanced years. She said things like cancer and dementia are at the forefront of her mind. And she stated feeling like she has access to wonderful health care in the La Jolla area. However, her health insurance is expensive, and she does qualify for government health insurance, but older people, especially older people who can afford it, tend to do what's called gap insurance, and they pay extra money to cover the health insurance that isn't covered by the government, and that costs her a lot of money, a lot. And Judy O is a nurse, family nurse practitioner from a local clinic. She stated that while the community is really good about routine checkups and preventative screenings, for physical issues, that mental health and drug and alcohol abuse is a huge problem. And it actually affects a large age range from very young to very old. Um, Even though she is a primary care provider, drug education, treatment, and youth prevention is a passion of hers that she advocates for a lot in her free time. She believes that to combat this issue, early intervention and adequate education is key in the fight against this. So she was actually saying that prescription drugs is a huge problem there. And you figure with the income being so high that a lot of the people there can afford to develop these drug issues. So that was really interesting. It's actually something that I kind of knew about. So I was able to predict that, both of those actually, but it was really interesting hearing more about kind of how it goes on behind the pretty white picket fences and kept yards. So for City Heights, Juan S. has lived in City Heights for his whole life. He's about 30 years of age. He feels that obesity and diabetes are the biggest concerns for his community. He felt that culture and traditional foods play a huge part in weight issues. Just people, eating what their comfort, what is their culture, but actually being very unhealthy. He's of Hispanic culture, so he was speaking more about that. But he did say the other cultures that live in Occupy City Heights also really tend to appear more overweight. And he says that people in his culture even state that being a little overweight is healthy, whereas if you look more lean, maybe in a normal BMI, he said that they would tell you that you were very skinny and that they were worried about you. So a big thing that he talked about was exercise, and how exercise kind of helps you eat healthy, and eating healthy kind of helps you exercise. So when you don't have one of those, it kind of just leaves you with this desire to eat the foods of your culture, but that are not healthy, and you're not combating it with exercise. And he stated that education and classes on nutrition and exercise would be an excellent contribution to the community. He even brought up a specific story about a friend who was a trainer and who would come back, who was from his city, from his part of town, from City Heights, would come back and do free community workouts and classes. And he stated that he felt like the population of people responded much better to that because the trainer was from them, was one of them, was a City Heights resident, somebody that they knew and grew up with and looked like them, came from the same background as they did. It made them more open, I guess, to being educated. That was very interesting. Chelsea is a nurse in the City Heights population. She made some big points about cultural diversity playing a big role as far as barriers to service, just how different cultures view different things. So besides there being a large, Hispanic community, there's a large African and Asian community as well in City Heights, and different cultures have very different views. And so a lot of things like preventative services, or coming in for your routine checkups is just not accessed by people. And then a lot of these people are immigrants, and English there's not their first language. So knowing that they even have these clinics, these free clinics or these discounted clinics, or the community screenings, they might not even be able to know that that information is out there because it's not presented to them in their language or something they even know to look for. So that's what Chelsea felt was a huge barrier for that. These are my references, and thank you so much for listening to my windshield survey. Have a great day.